Iran's supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has declared to teach the U.S., quote, unforgettable lessons as the conflict in the Middle East escalates once again. In a speech read out by state TV, Khamenei also said that President Trump's signature on the Memorandum of Understanding was worthless after 7 consecutive nights of strikes by the United States. It comes as U.S. Central Command announced the deaths of 2 military personnel killed in Jordan following a barrage of missiles from Iran. A 3rd soldier is also missing. Kamran Matin is an associate professor of international relations at the University of Sussex in the UK. Hello and welcome, sir, to the program. Iran's supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has warned the US that it will face unforgettable lessons. Very strong words from him. Is this simply rhetoric aimed at projecting strength, or could Tehran be preparing for a significant escalation?
Good evening, and thanks for having me on. Well, Iranian discourse vis-a-vis the United States has always been very harsh and is often difficult to separate rhetoric and reality. But it's very clear that the United States' week-long bombing of southern Iran has created a lot of pressure and momentum for response beyond retaliation inside Iran, because it seems that Iranian leaders and military commanders believe this is laying the ground for potential U.S. attempt to capture part of at least Iranian coastline, the one closest to the Strait of Hormuz, to prevent Iran disrupting the traffic and exercise control over the Strait of Hormuz. One of Iran's former commanders of IRGC, who is also an advisor to Supreme Leader, Mohsen Rezai, yesterday claimed that if U.S. continues this current bombing, Iran will expand its response, and it will be proactive rather than simply reacting to American bombing, and widen the scope of the war. And I think the bombing of and firing missile at Jordan, at Kuwait and Bahrain, and even Saudi Arabia, which hadn't been targeted recently, suggests that Iran is acting on this threat of expanding the scope of its retaliations.
Right. So we're talking about escalations here. How close are we to a broader regional war that is going to bring in other neighboring countries?
The truth of the fact is that the war is already regional, in the sense that multiple countries are being targeted. In some cases, there are unconfirmed reports that some of the Gulf countries, in fact, have taken part in some of the bombings, although they have not obviously confirmed that, but there are rumors to that effect. I think the probably most important aspect of a potential regional war is whether Israel will be involved in this next round. Up to now, Israel has stood out of the conflict, apparently on the request of the US, and I think that has worked in favor of US policy, because given Israel's relation with the Arab countries, it's easier for these countries to respond to Iran or take a firmer position if Israel is not involved. However, if they can, this continues the bombings by the US on the Iranian southern parts, Iran might want to target some of US military planes, especially the refueling planes, which are based in Israel, in order to disrupt that bombing. And that will be on Israeli soil, and therefore Israel will see that as its right to respond, and therefore it can enter the war, and it will be changing the scope and intensity of the war compared to what is going on now.
Right. I can imagine that the killing of 2 U.S. troops is likely to resonate strongly in Washington. How significant is this moment, and how does it change the stakes for Washington?
It definitely will have an impact. In the past, actually, President Trump had several times suggested that if the U.S. military personnel are killed, the response will be very harsh. And in a way, one can see why any U.S. president would be compelled to respond, even if an escalation would not be necessarily seen as in the strategic interest of the U.S. But in this case, given the scope of U.S. attacks, they are already seem to be on the path of some sort of escalation and potential ground invasion. So this killing of U.S. soldiers will probably reduce the opposition within the U.S. establishment, the Democrats and some of the Republicans, against further involvement of the United States in the war, at least in the short term.
Meanwhile, while all this is going on, the Strait of Hormuz remains under severe disruption. There's reports of attacks on shipping and vessels being stopped. How much leverage does Iran still have over this strategic waterway?
Well, so long as Iran is able to disrupt traffic, which it has been able to, I mean, effectively the strait is sealed. There are the number of oil tankers crossing the strait are in handful. So that gives Iran a massive actually leverage. And in fact, the current war and the expansion and escalation of the war precisely boils down to this simple fact that Iran sees its control of Strait of Hormuz the only credible deterrent and the only actually viable leverage in any future negotiations, given how much its conventional military, apart from missile and drone, but the project, but Iranian Navy and Air Force seems to be completely destroyed. So Iran sees that as a really the only major leverage it has. But the thing is, from Gulf states' perspective and U.S., Iran's control and enduring control over Strait of Hormuz is not just about deterrence. It will make Iran the hegemonic, the dominant force in the region, and that will have far-reaching implications beyond the region and in relation to Israel, in relation to U.S. Global strategy vis-a-vis China, and so on and so forth. So neither side seems to be able to compromise on this particular issue, and that's why I think escalation is more likely than de-escalation in the near future.
Right. Quickly on this one before you go, just looking ahead, what realistic options remain for de-escalation? Is there still room for diplomacy?
I mean, neither side have officially and categorically rejected talks or diplomacy, but I think until and unless a new balance of power is established on the ground, both sides will try to test the limits of their ability to impose concession on the other side. So I think especially the targeting of the Saudi Arabia, given that Saudis have a defense pact with Pakistan, which Pakistan has been the main mediator between Iran and the US, suggests that Iran is already prepared for a major escalation, irrespective of what cost it will involve in terms of its relation with neighboring countries.
Right. Kamran Matin, Associate Professor of International Relations at the University of Sussex in the UK. Thank you very much.
Thank you.